Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Stephen Barkis, the curator of the Gunn Historical Museum in Washington. Today is Tuesday, November 23rd, 2021, and we thank you for joining us for this hybrid meeting of the Gunn Museum's Washington History Club at Night with participants both here in person at the library and virtually on Zoom. For those of you who are new to the History Club meetings, these aren't lectures, but rather a group discussion. So we encourage you to join in and share your memories about Washington Green, the Depot, Marbledale, New Preston, and Woodville. If you have any photos or objects, feel free to hold those up and share them with the group as well. Tonight's topic is Washington Fun Times, Dances, Proms, and Other Celebrations. During this meeting, which is being recorded and will be posted to the museum's YouTube channel and archived at the museum, your video and audio settings will remain on. We ask that you keep yourself muted to minimize background noise, and when you'd like to join the conversation, unmute yourself and feel free to join in and talk. It's important that only one person speak at a time so everyone can hear what's being discussed. And also note on the top right of your screen, there's a button that allows you to switch between the gallery view and the speaker view so you can see everyone else in the meeting. I wanted to mention our next program is Raising the Curtain, the History of Theater in Washington with guest lecturer Sarah Griswold on Monday, December 13th at 6:30 on Zoom. Then in January, we have Parabolus Origin with guest lecturers Renee Borowski and Matt Kent on Monday, January 17th at 6:30, also on Zoom. And then we're back here at the library and on Zoom for Washington History Club. That's Tuesday, January 25th at 6:30. And we'll be discussing notable citizens of Washington then and now. Please mark your calendars and register for these programs on the Gunn Museum's website. Our moderator for this evening is Dimitri Rimsky. He grew up in Washington and attended Washington Elementary and High School. Over the years, he has been involved in many town activities and organizations. In addition to serving on the town's COVID-19 response committee, he is currently a member of both the Planning Commission and the Historic District Commission. He works as a house painter and is also an occasional poet. Now I'll hand the program over to Dimitri.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm glad to see we have a few more people chiming in on Zoom. You're welcome to turn your cameras on. And as Stephen said, if you want to volunteer something to say, just unmute yourself or yell or wave your hands or do something. Zoom protocol as it goes. I really hope some of you have brought some memories or can dust off a few, because otherwise it's just going to be me talking about a lot of dates that I had going to dances that I've forgotten. We do have Bruce Adams here, right? And his brother is in there as somewhere out in the ozone. Right now we're as hybrid as you get with two people sitting here, COVID vaccinated and boosted, and we're taking a risk, and you're just going to talk without our masks on. Otherwise, you wouldn't hear a word we're saying. So the idea came that over the years, there have been a lot of celebrations and dances. There used to be, when I was growing up, a lot more social activity. It seems like there was a lot more social activity in the town. And in years past, before I was old enough to know any better, there seemed to have been a lot of social events. And I was hoping we'd have some people here that would remember some of those, but I'll just sort of put a word in. It seemed to me that, for example, I think the Grange or somebody used to do square dances at the town hall. That seemed, or the fire department used to have a ball. Does anybody that's online remember any of those things, or am I just making it up? Anybody? No, not yet. All right. Well, I know that there used to be square dances at the town hall. Somebody put them on. I have a vague recollection that the firemen used to have a ball, but certainly there were a number of regular events. The club hall, the Washington Club used to give dances 2 or 3 times a summer, right?
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to remember, there used to always be some kind of combo that would play. For some reason, Eddie Sarnock is one name that comes to mind, but
Free rock and roll.
oh, definitely free rock and roll. You know, it was a lot of Bye Bye Blackbird and Sunny Side of the Street, and yeah, it was an odd event. For those of you who've never been to a club dance at the Washington Club Hall, I'll give you a little bit of background. There were usually 3, I think, like Memorial Day and then 4th of July, and then sometime in August. Gave people a time to recover from their hangovers. So the club dance in those days were pretty well attended, and not just club members, but it was a regular reason for people to have parties in advance of the dance, dinner parties and so forth. And there were, I think it was Bring Your Own, wasn't it?
I wouldn't know.
No, of course you wouldn't, right.
If I remembered it all. No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Bring Your Own. And that didn't seem to deter anybody. I think they had mixers you could get. And if you were junior members and their guests, in those days, the club hall had a stage. And so the juniors were sat at a table up on the stage. And I was never sure whether that's so that the adults could keep an eye on us or whether we could keep an eye on them. But those dances were really a lot of fun, actually. And they were an introduction into social life for most of us at one time or another.
You know, my mother was a member of the club.
Of course.
But I don't remember.
You don't remember?
I don't remember those. I don't know. Chris, do you remember those?
Chris is blocked off. He needs to unmute.
I remember parents going to them, but I don't remember being part of that till rock and roll came in.
Yeah.
We did our own thing.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's some, actually, I'm glad you brought that up because there were a couple of interesting, I'll bring up a couple of interesting notes there. One was that the junior members of the club hall at one time wanted to put on a quote unquote twist dance. So that dates it right there. And we went to the club elite seniors and said, well, we wanted to put on the dance. And they said, well, that's a lovely idea. And we said, well, we have some friends that are in a band and we'll have a twist dance and so forth. And they thought, oh, that's great. And then we pointed out that there were only 6 junior members and that if we really wanted to have a good dance, we should probably invite more people. And they were a little skeptical about that. They didn't think maybe we should make it an open event. And I said, well, why don't we just say that our guests can come? And they said, well, that would be all right. So we invited everybody that we knew. And we hired a band that used to play in a bar over in New York State called the Berkshire Lodge.
Oh, yeah.
Right, okay.
I lost my glasses over there.
Really?
Yeah.
A lot of other stuff there too.
Somebody stole my glasses off the table.
So anyway, we hired this band called The Shades. And we managed to get, I think Randy gave us some soda. So we had posters and everything. And then somebody found out that that the band was a twist band. They could play What I Say and you know, Chubby Checker and all that stuff. And the singer was sort of a Chubby Checker lookalike, which they hadn't anticipated. So they called us up and they said, well, we're concerned. I said, about what? And they said, well, the band. And I said, what about the band? And
who called you up?
Oh, the director, the club. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I know where you're headed.
Yeah, yeah. And they said, we're a little concerned. The band is coming, you know. And we said, well, okay, but
Hayden Smith is,
What- what should we?
Hayden Smith doesn't hear anything because he's mute.
I'm
Who?
sorry.
Who doesn't hear anything?
Hayden Smith isn't hearing anything because it's all mute.
No. Willie's hearing all
There
of
you
it.
go.
Okay.
Willie hears all of it, but we're leaving Willie on mute just in case I
Okay.
turn
Okay.
the music on too loud.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
thanks.
Okay, thanks, Hayden. So anyway, I pointed out that the dance is already scheduled and the posters were out and people were coming. And I would have to explain why we were canceling the dance. And they said, well, why would you have to do that? And I said, well, if we canceled the dance without any explanation, that would look odd. And if I told people why you want us to cancel the dance, that would be even worse. And so they said, well, just make sure that it doesn't get rowdy.
Rowdy.
Rowdy, yeah. So anyway, Andy Smith was the drummer, I think, or the guitar player. Anyway, it was a great time. We had half the town's kids, most of the town's kids showed up.
I was probably there.
You may have been there if you can find your glasses. In any case, that was one of those moments. This was what must be 63. Yeah, I would say 63.
Freshman in high school.
Yeah. So it just was an indication of the times and also of the nature of the town at that time, especially from the point of view of a club hall or of a country club, where they sort of still thought of themselves as fairly exclusive. And I think luckily we have changed a great deal now, but we had a lot of fun and we managed to organize quite a few of those dances, at least 2 or 3. So those are the club hall dances. I don't see anybody that seems to have anything to offer about any of that. Anybody have anything to suggest? Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
I don't know if you can see this. I'll put it up.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's the big B, the Berkshire Lodge.
Oh, you got a picture of it.
Whoa,
Oh my
yes.
God.
Oh, there's my glasses.
That was taken in, a friend and I went over there, Bob Camp and I went over there in the 80s to find all the old watering holes.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the Berkshire Lodge, which they were using to store buses in.
Yeah.
So it was quite a change from what it was, but I don't know what it looks like now. It's a long time, but most of them were there, L&M's,
Yeah.
the Berkshire Lodge,
Sure.
Josie's, right up down the line.
Okay.
Eric, I'm very disappointed. I didn't realize it was you, because I'm sitting so far away from the computer. But as a top-notch basketball player, I'm very disappointed to hear you were over at all those places.
Well,
Yeah,
I'll be honest and tell you that in high school, I played close. I didn't want Ted on my back, so I was a good boy. But once I went to college, that all ended. And, going over was part of life.
Yes, it
And
was.
many times, Bulls Bridge and over the bridge and the back way, and meeting cars coming the other way and taking girls over and bringing them back and on and on and on. So that was another aspect of growing up in Washington. I never had any accidents, thank God, but there were some crazy scenarios going on over there and on the way home. So yeah, I think we were going over like 5 or 6 days a week.
Somebody told me, I ended up, I've lived in Kent. I live in Washington now. I'm back in Washington.
Yeah.
I lived in Kent for the past 33 years. And I met so many people who know exactly what you just went through with all the different bars and stuff. And I probably rubbed elbows with them at all those places. And I remember somebody telling me that the day the liquor laws changed,
That's right.
the day the liquor laws changed, almost all those bars on the other side of the border in New York State closed.
Yeah.
The Rumpus Room, the Berkshires, all of them closed.
Yeah. Yeah. The Rumpus Room was gone, it burned. But Josie's was still there, even in the 80s. But you're exactly right. The minute it went to 21 in New York, it was game over. No one bothered going over anymore because it made no difference.
No.
But you know, up in Kent, you used to go to Bog Hollow.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
and that burned.
And the Edgewood.
You go to the bogs
Sharon, yeah.
and you get a couple of six packs to drink on the way over.
Well,
Yeah,
for
you
those,
could-
for
you could
those
buy it
of-
over the bar there.
For
yeah.
those of you.
Oh
who
yeah,
don't-
right over the bar. You walk in, say, "Give me a six," put your money down, you got it over the bar. Yeah, you know.
Those of you who don't know what we're talking about, when the drinking age in New York was 18, the recreation of Connecticut teenagers was to drive over to New York State. And the best way to get there from Washington was to go over Bull's Bridge and through the Dogtails, which are
Yeah.
these little back roads that wound over into whatever
Wingdale.
right?
Wingdale,
And other and points beyond.
Yeah,
And I have a theory because a lot of kids were killed driving on 84 to the Brewster bars,
Before and after.
before and after and so forth. But our kids very seldom had any trouble because you couldn't drive the Dogtails and over the hills into Bull's Bridge more than 30 miles an hour if you were sober. So in some cases, so a lot of us, you know, even if you were a little confused, the worst that would happen is you'd bump into a tree and excuse yourself and back up and go home.
that's right.
But I think in some ways those back roads saved a lot of us from this area from any serious accidents. But
And the other reason was that the state police were on the state highways and on the road. So by going over the hill and down through Bull's Bridge and out that way, you know, the worst you could do is come back to Washington and run into Link Fenn.
yeah,
And all Link would do is stop you and take your liquor, put it in his trunk and say, "Don't do it again or I'll tell your father." So,
and that contributed to some of Link's problems as a constable.
yeah.
I have to tell you this story. So I'd gotten my draft card and I went over to New York to get a bottle of gin for the juniors to pass under the table at the club dance. And at that time, I only had a motorcycle. So the only way I could do it was to put the bottle under my seat on the motorcycle. And as I came up out of Bull's Bridge, there was a state cop and he just waved me through because he, you know, there I was summer, I was on a motorcycle, he didn't see anything. And as I was going across Bull's Bridge, coming up over onto the highway, I hit a bump and the bottle broke under my seat. And the cop just looked at me and just shook his head and just get out of here, just go. But there were a lot of disappointed juniors at that party because I failed to bring the nourishment. But I have to say that those club dances, I mean, in the 50s and 60s, cocktail hour was a pretty serious event among the adults, that's for sure.
Yes.
And there was some pretty serious heavy drinking and some pretty bizarre behavior with our adults that were anyway. So okay, the club, enough about the club dances. Does anybody remember any other dances or activities before I launch into something else? Anybody?
How about these? I know Chris remembers this, because we've talked about it recently. There were probably in the late 60s, mid to late 60s, a series of summer dances at the Roxbury Town Hall.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Anybody remember those? There were always bands because there were no such thing as DJs.
Well, I bet the Tickum
So
Boys
we
were
had
involved.
Tommy and the Duels.
Oh, yeah, from Beverly,
We
from the
had the-
Music Box.
We had the Night Riders.
Yeah.
There had to be a Canavero in every band we ever had.
What about Billy Dills? Didn't Fastback have a band?
Yeah, Fastback.
Fastback had his own band.
Yeah, he had the Metones
Yeah,
out of
But
Waterbury, I
they all
think.
had bands.
So there would be the club hall, there'd be dances there sometimes, and there'd be the parish hall at the Congregational Church.
Yes, in Washington.
And
yeah.
also Roxbury Town Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was
And
always live music. It was always
Roxbury
live.
Tennis Court, there used to be dances. We used to
Really?
go there.
Really?
And everyone loved those dances because you could watch your car and drink. and it was wide open. So, yeah, I remember those dances, but towards the end of high school or so, yeah. But what about the dances that we always had in high school?
Oh, the proms.
And what about who remembers Mr. and Mrs. Allingham?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that
The
up.
Rainbow Room.
The Rainbow
See?
Room dancing class.
Dancing
Bruce.
classes.
That was
And the
Bruce.
boys sat on one side and the girls
That's
on the other, and then they would start and he'd be talking and she'd drop the needle and he'd say, not yet, I'm not done. And then he'd keep talking and then he'd say, boy's choice or girl's choice. And everyone would run across the floor to try to get the girl they wanted to dance with or vice versa and hope that the girl or guy would say yes. So we'd plow our way around the floor. That went on for many years. The
Yeah,
Allinghams.
the thing that I remember most about that though is first, and I, you know, as somebody who went on to be a teacher and all this sort of stuff, everybody went to dancing class, it seemed like.
Yeah,
It just sort of, you did it.
yeah.
No, your parents didn't have to force you.
No.
Went to dancing class with Mr. and Mrs. Allingham.
And you had to put your chewing gum behind your ear.
Yeah, you did.
Bruce, describe how Mr. Allingham announced the new dance. Remember the one that was going around the world?
Dimitri mentioned the twist. You talking about the twist? Yeah, he taught us how to do the twist, which was to, I don't know if you can see me if I stand up. No, you won't. But this is the way he taught it, was to dry your back with a towel and pretend you're stomping out 2 cigarettes at the same time. So stand up and try that and you'll feel like a total
And
asshole.
it works.
But what?
It works.
Yeah.
It does work. But if you do it exactly, you feel like such a dope. But that he taught us to do that with his spit shine black wingtip shoes.
Well,
and her sitting over in the corner spinning the discs.
Well,
and that was the punishment. If you messed up, you went and sat with Mrs. Allingham. The biggest mess up in the history of dancing class that I remember was at I don't know if you remember, but at the end of every year, they had I don't know what they called it, not a prom, but a formal, the social. I think that's what they call it.
Social, yes.
Yeah, at the social, Sparky Ullman rolled out a package of BBs on the dance.
Oh. Way to go, Sparky.
He sat next to Allingham for the night, I bet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, since we're on school dances, I mean, there were other school dances, but I brought some yearbooks and I'm going to see if I can put a couple of the prom pictures up in front of the camera so you can see. All right, I have them right here.
So I remember going to these school dances, and my mother, who some of you may remember was the librarian, Lois Adams, then Marsh. She and my father were occasionally the chaperones. And I would get home from the dance and my father said, I saw you lurking over there in the corner with a girl.
Okay, here we go. That's Bruce Canavero and his date, which I think was Mrs. Gage. I can't remember her name. Not Mrs. Gage. No.
That's not Alice Gage.
Alice Gage, right?
I don't think so.
No.
Yes, that's Alice.
Alice
That's
Gage.
Mrs. Gage's daughter.
Mrs. Gage's daughter and Bruce Canavero.
Yes, Bruce.
And the theme was Paradise. Something Paradise. I don't know if that's showing up for you people. Is it? Anybody?
Yeah, Paradise at the Deep.
Yeah, Paradise of the Deep. Okay. That's 60, that's 63, 62. 63. Mardi Gras. And can you see who
Is that Orr Pickett?
yeah, it could be.
Yeah, that's Orr Pickett. right
Yeah,
there.
the king and queen.
The king, queen, the queen is Meg Gorham and the king is Jim Ripper.
Uh-huh. Okay. So there's those guys. There's the king and queen. And those are the decorations. Let's see if we can get those up there.
Can you guys see those?
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow, it looks better for you than it does for us. So yeah, that was a big deal to decorate the whole gymnasium.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along, 64.
Oh, that's Cindy Wells.
Cindy Wells.
Yeah.
Cindy Wells and Art Crabtree, two redheads.
Oh my God.
As the king and queen.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to, when I go down to the food market, I'm gonna give Cindy a radish about this. Okay, there they are.
Nice.
Cindy and Art Crabtree. And what was the theme for that one?
3 coins in a fountain.
Oh, you remember?
I've got the book, yeah.
You've got your
Was
cheating.
that was your senior year?
I've got my own, yeah.
Was that your senior year?
That was my year.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah,
Eric,
64.
you mentioned earlier you played basketball with Bob Camp. Were you classmates with Bob?
He was a year ahead, but we were together since we were like in
Well, I
fourth grade.
watched all of you play and played against some of you, but Bill Camp was his brother, correct?
Right, and Bill still lives in the farm house
Yeah,
in,
Bill lives right next door to my daughter almost, out in Kent Hollow.
right.
My
Right.
my 14-year-old grandson now mows his lawn.
Oh, nice. So that's good to know.
Okay,
Right.
so one more, Some Enchanted Evening, was that what this one
Oh,
was?
that sounds like a winner. Some Enchanted Evening with Dottie Yowsam and Tom Purdy as the king and queen.
No, Don Johnson.
Oh, I'm sorry, I read the first ones. Oh, they were the chairman.
Yeah. Yeah, Don Johnson and Dottie Yowmson.
65.
Don Johnson.
And Brian and Kaylor and Diane Swanson. So, okay, those are the king and queen. Let's see.
Dinah.
Dinah, right. We've lost her. She's gone now.
Right.
And decorations.
And we lost Frenchie too. Frenchie's in that picture.
Yeah, she's gone too.
Yeah.
In fact, we're getting, the herd is thinning out. So I have to tell you, okay, we have a couple of things. There's a dragon here. I don't know if you can see it. Let me see if I can get it on there. Where is it? Yeah, you see that dragon?
Mhm.
Okay, that was on the stage behind the band. That dragon was made of cardboard on my living room floor, along with a lot of other decorations. I still have that dragon.
Oh, wow.
This?
Yeah.
Wow.
And one other thing, I'm going to tell you a couple stories, but we got a surprise for you.
You didn't wear this. did you?
I'm not wearing this now.
This is quite a gown. I don't know how well you can all see it. It's
This
full
is-
length.
This is,
You look marvelous.
thank you. This is Dottie Anderson's prom dress.
Is it?
Wow.
Dottie Almson's prom dress, right?
Oh, my God.
I was just doing some work at her house and I told her that I was going to do this talk. And you got to look at the bodice. The brocade is incredible.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway, she had this prom dress hanging up and I said, Dottie, you have to come to the talk and wear your prom dress. And she said, "I can pay for that." I said, yeah, you're close. And she said, you wear it. And I said, no, but I'll take it. So we have an actual prom dress from the 1965, 64 junior prom.
Amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And she's going to be very happy to know that it got seen. So anyway, I have a quick story about my prom. So for those.
Who was your date?
Pardon?
Who was your date?
My date was Nancy Wheeler.
Okay.
And we triple dated with myself and Nancy, Peter Bellinger and Bonnie Baker, and Howard Kallstrom, and I can't remember her name now. I'd have to look it up. Anyway, so because none of us had cars, Howard had a car, so we all went down, and there was a procession, right? Every prom you had a procession. and everybody sort of like paraded around the gymnasium, and then you sort of passed by the king and queen, and I don't know what that was all about, but that was the ritual. Well, the problem is that Brian and Donnie and Dinah and Dottie were the ones who had learned how to lead the procession.
No one else?
No, I was there at the rehearsal, but I wasn't taught how to lead the procession. But they ended up being king, queen, and attendants. And so somebody came up to me and said, "You have to lead the procession." And I said, "I don't know how to lead the procession." And
So they were being observed by the procession.
right, yeah. So I turned to Nancy and I said, I don't know what to do. She said, "Neither do I." I said, "Okay, well, we'll just start going around." Well, at a certain point, I didn't know where to go. So I just sort of split, and Nancy and I walked around the center decoration, which was a little bridge or something. And as we're walking around, there's a picture in the yearbook, and you can see that the whole procession is going in a circle, and we're coming around in the middle of it, about to bump into the circle, as if, I mean, to just run right into it. We had no place else to go. And my friend Peter and Bonnie in the picture are turning to each other and laughing because they know we don't know what we're doing. And I don't know how we got out of it. I think we just broke through the line and ended up walking up to the king and queen. But it's one of those funny moments when you look at the picture and you can see it's sort of, I'm looking at Nancy and saying, "I don't know what to do now." And my friends are laughing and everybody else is looking rather confused.
I'm surprised that the faculty chaperones or organizers didn't take that into consideration, that the people who were trained to lead the procession might be.
Yeah, there were a lot of miscues. And then there was an after prom party. Always. And then after the after prom party, Lumpy Rathburn and Tim Tierney and a bunch of us got in his car and we went to the Windmill Diner for breakfast. Yeah. And on the way back, Lumpy fell asleep and took out about 7 or 8 guardrails on the 67 coming down from where that blue farm is.
Yeah.
Just coming around the curve after the
That's a
blue
tough-
farm on
that's a tough
Rockford.
curve.
Yeah. And we tried to get out of the car. We couldn't on the passenger side. And so we got out the other side. Everybody was asleep when it happened. And we got out of the car and we realized that what had happened is that the guardrail cable had cut through the fender of the car and sliced along the passenger doors in such a way that the car was actually being cut by the cable. And all the guardrails had sort of stacked up in front because they weren't very well grounded. And we ended up being able to get out with nobody got hurt. And the car and the cable saved us because we would have rolled over into the gully if we hadn't had that cable cut into us. Lumpy was not happy because he had to throw all his beer away, which was stacked up in the trunk. And I ended up having to walk. I guess I walked back to Roxbury and the Wheelers gave me a ride home. So yeah, typical prom party.
The thing about the proms that I graduated in '69 and I have the carousel in the clouds right here.
Oh, okay, good. Oh, you got it.
Good.
Fantastic.
Who were the king and queen?
Corky Adams and Kathy Seymour.
Okay, and how about you? Were you anything?
I was right there. I'm an attendant.
Oh, you're one of the attendants.
Wow.
All right.
Okay. Close
Along
to
with-
no score.
And then the carousel in the clouds.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
And that's when they still held them in the gym.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my take, I always thought that, well, how long did they continue to do those cheesy kind of old? They were like our parents. They would rent this band, this combo from the New Milford Music Store.
Yeah.
And they played all this old music. When did they start actually saying, well, let's just do it what we like, you know?
Well, our year we had a band, we had a rock band that we hired from the Music Box.
Yeah.
He's right, though. Usually they were these old, like the name that comes to mind is this sweet bolsatones
Yeah.
who were all in their tuxes playing
Yeah.
the kind of music
Well,
you'd hear at a wedding.
Maybe they decided to maybe we broke the mold and then they realized that wasn't such a
Yeah.
good idea.
Well, Dimmy, from class to class, it really differed in the like musical talent. Your time, you had some great music. People with Andy and Bruce Canavero, and
Sure.
we had John Dwyer and Allie Chapin and people like that were a lot of people were really talented and put bands together that were good.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, there were we did a couple. Speaking of we did a couple of fundraisers. I think one for Andy when Andy Smith was having his kidney problems, and he was in dialysis, and we tried to raise some money for him. And we got the town hall, and I think we had 5 or 6 bands for that, and raised a bunch of money to help Andy out. The other, anybody, any other?
Well, I have a rather unique prom story.
Okay, go for it.
I went through Washington schools up through 8th grade, and in 1963, I went to Gunnery. To this day, I'm still not sure why I did go to Gunnery, but I did. And I lasted 4 years. And in my senior year at Gunnery, I don't think they'd ever had a prom before, but Gunnery, somebody decided that we had to have a prom. Well, this was a school with all boys.
Yeah.
So how that was pulled off, I don't really remember.
The Wickham girls.
But
It was
coincidentally,
Wickham.
That's right.
it must have been
girls.
Wickham, but
Yeah, Wickham School. That was
Coincidentally-
the girls.
I would, unless somebody had a girlfriend from back home that they had, I don't know.
Mhm.
But the other half of the story for me was, at that time, my girlfriend was a junior at Washington High School, and she was the chairman of the Washington Prom,
Prom.
which was on the exact
Day.
same night. So she moved into my house, and my mother moved my sister out of her bedroom, and girlfriend moved in with all this gowns and changing stuff for the after party, and all this stuff moved in. And the whole, I mean, it all went off okay. We went first to mine and then down to the depot to hers. And then, but she, primarily as I remember, she more than me were just so wiped out by the end of the evening. I don't even know if we went to the after party at Chris Bruin's house
Oh,
out on
okay.
River Road.
Probably saved your life.
Probably did. I don't even know if we went, but because it was such, and so proms, yeah, I had prom. I remember my own 2 children who did proms, and they always seemed to be somewhat of a letdown.
Well,
After all the buildup and the decorations and all the arrangements and the party, and it always seemed to be somewhat of a letdown.
Well, it's an old ritual. I mean, I think the idea of the prom, and that's why I was hoping we'd have some elderly people. Here I am, 74, asking for elderly people. Ironic. But it seemed to me that the idea of having a social event for young people at a point in their teenage years when they're sort of on the cusp of going into adulthood, that's a ritual that probably exists in almost every culture. And I think the prom is a form of that behavior going back for decades or generations. The idea that there's an acknowledgement that you are now socially presented. It's sort of like the coming out party for debutantes, similar kind of thing. And I think the prom, the idea of the prom is that you are now presenting yourself as an adult that is able to function in society. The irony of it is that most of us remember it as a dysfunctional event in which we were all somewhat embarrassed and unequipped to handle, and managed to find our way through it, even if we had to rent tuxedos and all the rest of it. You know, these beautiful prom dresses, the whole social tension of it is quite a memory for most people that went through it. And I think there's a reason for that, and it's the coming of age event. And I think that it's good that I think there should be a coming of age event, even if it's always a disaster. Anyway, I want to move on to one other, I don't know where we are with time, but I wanted to move on to a couple other things. And I think Sani's still here. Yeah. My father was one of the founding members of the Washington Art Association. And the Art Association used to do an annual Masquerade Ball or Beaux Arts Ball. And it was always, I mean, a whole thing. I mean, I can remember my father and Bill Talbot and Bill Sommerfeld and a bunch of other ne'er-do-well artists decorating the club hall, and people coming in these incredible costumes. And it went on there were quite a few of them. And I can't remember them too well because they pretty much had stopped by the time I was in my teenage years. I only really remember one. And I don't really remember too much about it other than it was a sort of a phantasma of people coming in this incredible costumings. The only one I really stands out was I remember Mary Harwood, who at that time was, I guess she was still Mary Durant, had written a book about the Dramalites, which you may hear about when Sarah Griswold gives her talk next few weeks, which I urge you all to listen to. But anyway, she'd written a book about the Dramalites, and people weren't that well displayed in the book, shall we say. And even though she had disguised the names, everybody knew who they were in the book. And so there had been some social tension about that. So when Mary came to the Masquerade Ball, she came with a rubber dagger stuck in her back with sort of a, just a piece of the hilt of a rubber dagger stuck in her back with some blood dripping down. That was her costume. But later on, I got involved with the Art Association and wanted to revive that social activity, which I think the Art Association is now, they do a mojito party, which is really fantastic. But it's not exactly a dance, but it's sort of a cultural event. But I sort of thought the Art Association should revitalize some of these things. And we did, during my tenure as a trustee, we did two dances. One was with David Grousman's quartet, and we did a dance called a Black and White with a Touch of Red. So the idea was that people were supposed to wear black and white with something red on. Some women came with some rather risky lingerie. And everybody managed to come up with a fairly classy thing. And we decorated the town hall, the club hall, in sort of an Art Nouveau thing. Unfortunately, there are no pictures, but I had wanted to make it a bit of an event. So I'd hired a fire eater and a tango demonstration and a juggling motorcyclist. And the Art Association was a little taken back, and they said, well, it's a dance. Why are you hiring a fire eater and a juggling motorcyclist? And I said, well, because I want it to be entertaining. And the fire eater was blowing huge plumes of flame into the air as people approached the club hall. And that was the picture in the New Milford Times, was, Art Association lights the town on fire with dance.
What year was this?
I'm trying to remember now. It was probably late 90s, mid 90s, somewhere in there. Yeah. And anyway, so that was a pretty well attended event. And then Sani, who's still there somewhere.
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are, Sani. Sani, who has been a thespian for the Little Theater for years and has done some pretty remarkable shows, collaborated with me on a dance that we gave at the Art Association called the Heartthrob Ball. It was Valentine's, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
it was at Town Hall.
Yeah, it was at the town hall. And So this is a poster from it.
Yay.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonny, for bringing this memorabilia. And this is the program. It was pretty elaborate. We had the David, what was the name of the band? Pritchard, right? Dan Pritchard Band. And then Sonny and I collaborated, and we created a radio theater spoof.
I still have the scripts.
Pardon?
I still have the scripts that we wrote.
Oh, you do have the scripts. Oh.
Yes, I didn't send those.
Anyway, the idea was that they were called the Moxie Theater Players. In between sets of the band, 3 or 4 of us would get on stage and do a sort of a radio theater show. But there was all this innuendo and cross wires and confusion going on, which was actually the play. But because it's a radio theater play, normally you don't see the people on stage. So we were playing it as if we were on radio, but we were actually sort of showing off that we didn't know what was going on and things were mistaken. And there was a lot of sort of innuendo in the script. And it was a Valentine's, obviously heartthrob. And there were.
It was a benefit.
It was a benefit for the Art Association.
How did it do well financially?
No.
No?
We had a heck of a good time though.
But what we did do is, I mean, I think it did. I think we broke even.
Fun.
It was a lot of
And I'm
fun.
guessing you said in the 90s?
Yeah,
And I probably looked at it in the Waterbury Public. What the hell's happening to Washington?
yeah. The whole town hall was decorated, and then on each table were candies. If I remember, Sonny,
On each table there was what?
there were little candy baskets on all the tables.
Oh, yeah, little Valentine hearts,
Yeah.
I guess.
Anyway, so this is a picture of me and Sonny, and I can't remember her name. Do you remember? her name?
Rita, yeah, Rita Rabel.
Okay, and that was our costuming, and this is Sonny and Carolyn Wallace. Carolyn was the singer in the group for the Heartthrob Moxie Players, and also I think she sang with Dan Pritchard for a couple of sets.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty elaborate thing, but the point that I'm making is that there was a time when various organizations in the town put on various events, and I can only bring you a few of these, and I don't know if anybody else had any. I wish there were more people here that might have had other memories of other events, but it was the kind of thing that we did to just for our own entertainment, but also because it was great to be able to have an event that brought the townspeople together and gave everybody a chance to socialize and have a good time. And as a child, I can remember that, and that's why I wish we had any more pictures of it. There were dances at the town hall that were given by either the Grange or the firemen or somebody did something, because I can remember my parents going to those back in the 50s. So I think that oddly, there isn't very much of that anymore. And I think that's one reason why I wanted to talk about it. Other than the senior proms or the junior proms, there aren't a lot of that kind of social activity anymore, and I'm not sure why.
Along those same lines, do you remember for many years, Gunnery put on a New Year's Eve party in the gym for anybody who wanted to come,
Right.
open to the town?
Yeah,
Do they still do that?
I don't think so, no.
Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Big.
Well, I took over giving I had New Year's Eve parties for 20 years.
I went to
Yeah.
one.
Oh, you did?
Oh,
And
yeah.
here you are.
Yeah.
Amazing. But No, I think people, it's an odd thing. I mean, I think the town in general has been pretty active in trying to create events. I mean, there's the Holiday in the Depot, there's various other kinds of townwide events that, I mean, there's still the church fair, the carnival's no more, but there still are townwide events, and that's a credit to the Parks and Recreation people. And but a lot of the organizations don't really have that kind of profile anymore as having a social activity that brings the town together in a way that used to happen that way. I mean, and I think
That's probably true with a lot of towns.
that may be, and I'm not sure what the shift is. Maybe there's a difference now in the way people socialize. Certainly, I mean, we're sitting here on Zoom, so we can't exactly waltz around the room with each other, can we?
Well, Demi, think about, the social life of our parents generation, because they had, as your parents did, dinner party after dinner party after dinner party, and then the club hall dances. And I mean, it was constant entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah, our parents did.
They were knockout, drag out parties. I mean,
Yeah, they were. And
I think it's interesting just to think about that something has shifted in the way our societies entertain how we entertain ourselves and each other. I think we may have smaller dinner gatherings, but I mean, I can remember going to dinner parties at somebody's home, certainly because my father was an artist, there were usually artists' homes, but there would usually be 20 or 30 people. It was not unusual to go to a dinner party and there were 24 people at the dinner party. And the kids were sort of relegated to some corner or stuck out in the barn or something, but that was not an unusual thing, don't you think?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember being a kid and just roaming around and having people patting me on the head and picking up the cocktails that were left over and stuff,
Yeah, he used to drink what was left in the glass.
Yeah. You didn't do that.
I didn't do that.
Never,
I tried
no.
to stop him and he went down and drained them all. So.
But there would be music. I remember my dad playing piano and then singing old like college drinking songs, dancing. I mean, we still do that. I mean, some of us still do, but not like that at a regular basis.
Anybody else that's sort of in the dark mute world on our Zoom screens here? Anybody remember their parents having dinner parties or they're going to dinner parties that were more vivacious than what we seem to be doing? I mean, COVID aside, I mean, we understand that to put the kibosh on a lot of things, but it just seems to me that there used to be more of that than there is now.
Yeah, I would agree.
The end of the party was always interesting to observe as the various couples would be leaving. I remember that.
Or they may not have come as a couple.
And
Exactly.
There were something you won't see at very many parties anymore. The ashtrays were overflowing.
Oh, yeah.
With cigarettes.
And this woman, you wanted to say something.
The town has changed. The town is changing.
Yeah.
And I'm Tara, by the way, not woman.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I couldn't see your name.
But, this other person?
No, Tara, go ahead.
All right. So it's changed and it's changing, and it's not like we all meet at the post office or at the supply company or whatever. It's just a little bit different. So it's a little different
She froze.
kind of
Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's just different, and it's just getting used to that. It's not going to be the same as having a hoedown.
Yeah.
Well, and I agree with you, Tara. That's very true. But I left Washington in 1971 to get married and came back last year. So it's changed.
Yeah, no. I think for some of us, I mean, Tara's been here pretty much throughout
As
the.
long as you, Dimitri,
Exactly.
as long as Chris
Yeah.
as well as here.
So, you know, the change, even as if you're in place, you see the change, but you don't see, it's not as startling as, I mean, certainly the last couple of years, it's been pretty startling because we increased our population by 1,000 or more. I mean, literally the COVID evacuation, I mean, literally we're at summer capacity residency full time. And that's a pretty significant change. And we're yet to see how that plays out in the long run. But a lot of the families that have moved in, that bought houses, they're younger families. A lot of them put their children in the schools, both the public and private schools. So they're kind of here for at least a while. And I think that's actually not a bad thing.
No, not at all.
So there's always been change. And I have to say, a funny, I was on the committee that was sort of working on the redesign of the plaza. And we'd run into a situation where the plaza was draining gasoline and pollutants into the river. So we had to figure out a way to change that. Plus the parking was atrocious. And a number of other things about it were sad. So we decided that we should try to do something. So I was on the committee to help redesign that. And of course, there were people who were furious that we were going to do anything, even though they were tripping over the broken sidewalk and stuff. Anyhow, somebody came up to me and they said, well, I don't see why we have to change anything. We're standing in front of the food market. And I said, well, you know, we kind of have to change things because the parking isn't very good and the drainage is really bad. And in the winter, there's ice in front of all the stores and the banks and everything, and it's a hazard. And the sidewalk is broken and it just doesn't look very nice. And we have to improve it. She said, well, I don't see why we should change. And I said, well, what should we, how should we leave it? Should we have the train come through? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, you're standing on the train tracks. And she said, what train tracks? And I said, where we are standing, there used to be a train that came through, and where the bank was used to be the train station. And she said, I never knew there was a train. I said, well, that's what happens when change happens. There used to be a train, now there's no train. Then we ended up with, there are no stockyards anymore. There's a nice lawn where the town hall lawn is instead of stockyards. And we're going to change the plaza so that the parking and the drainage is better. That's how things change. So in a sense, I think the idea that a town shouldn't ever be static. I think it's important that you keep changing. I think one reason why I'm on planning is because
You need to move. Everything
need to
needs to
move.
move.
You
It
need
needs
to-
to move, it needs to change, it needs to grow.
and it needs to adapt.
Exactly.
And right now, the biggest thing that this town needs is affordable housing, because our workers and our younger families, the children of our major residencies have no place to live anymore, and it's difficult to afford. Anyhow, I think we've pretty much covered. I'm sorry that we didn't have a chance to meet in person. I'm glad some of you came through on the Zoom. I wish more of you had a chance to share your memories instead of me and a bunch of old guys reminiscing about their drunken escapades. But that's party life. What can I tell you? And let's hope that the town can revitalize some of those social events, and maybe we'll all have a chance to dance again. So thank you all.
And I would encourage
Thank you.
you, as I said a couple times earlier, I moved back to Washington about a year ago. And one of the first things I did is contact the Gunn Memorial Library and sat down with Eric Bartkus, who introduced
Stephen Bartkus.
Stephen Bartkus,
Yes.
who introduced himself at the beginning of this meeting. Sorry, Stephen, if you're listening.
He's behind us somewhere.
Yeah, and was interviewed about my memories of the town. It was a fascinating thing for me. He said he enjoyed it. This is my stories. I would encourage any of you to do that if you get an opportunity.
Well, and to that end, I think that a town is more than its geography. It's a community, and the more you understand how that community has survived and how it continues to survive, is not just history, but it's also social engagement. And being socially active in the community is an important thing. It's how you get a sense of place. And I encourage all of us to do that in our own ways, wherever possible.
Bruce, I'm going to do that with Stephen next week. I've got a couple of hours and I'm going to talk, and I'm trying to take a lot of the old artifacts I had that my father saved when they were kind of throwing them out from Consolidated.
Have you seen what's happened to your old house?
It never looked like that when we lived there.
God, I go by it almost every day. It's unbelievable.
I met the people, the writers who own it, and talked to them and walked around. The only thing that looks the same is the property.
Basically.
The little house is gone. The big house is
Bigger.
a mega. Yeah. So, I mean, that's fine. Life goes on, you know, and I'm happy for them. They're a family, 3 children. It's a nice addition, and it's, you know, I know a lot of people don't like it, but I was like, well, this is good. I don't think my parents could get over it, but they're not around to see it. So, you know, but I am gonna, I sent class lists the other day to Stephen that my father found in the basement of Consolidated from 1908 until 1966. And these are graduation lists with people's names on them.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I've also got, which I'm going to put the names next to, pictures of every person who graduated from Washington from the 20s on, that they used to use on permanent record cards. And all that was being thrown out. This is back in the 80s. And my father grabbed it and held on to it, and then I got it. And I said, you know, this has got one place where it belongs, and that's at the Gunn.
Yeah.
Eric, while you're there, do you remember dances at the Boys Club in New Preston?
No, I just remember being there playing ball.
Yeah.
I remember going to recreation in the Bryan Memorial and having dances and playing with, you know, we had the bowling and that kind of thing. And
Yeah,
then
the bowling.
Joe Martin ran it, and then we could leave and come back. And it was, those were, The only other thing I remember are the dances at the high school after the basketball games. We all went down to the cafeteria, and they had records.
Yeah.
There always were records, and the girls would be in the corner putting on the records, and we'd be yelling out slow dances only, and the coach would learn. And and as far as the bands go, I remember Herman and the Chancellors, and I remember Tommy and the Duels.
Right.
They all came and played at the high school. But that one other quick note, that picture you had advertising this session, I believe that picture was in the 50s of the prom at the old gym before the flood.
Yeah.
That's because I looked at it carefully. I only could pick out a couple people in it that I might know. It's really early.
Yeah. But and you can see how everybody was, how formal it was.
Yes.
And again, that goes back to what I said earlier about the coming of age.
Yeah, it was a grand march.
Yeah.
And everyone had a grand march. Yeah.
That's right. Well, the coming of age has come to the end of our evening, I think. So
Yeah.
thank
Thank you guys, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Happy and thank
Nice.
you. I'm glad I came.
Nice
Yeah.
to see.
Connie, thank you for sending all that along.
See you, Chris. Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
You still
Bye,
are
all.
brothers, right?
As far as I know, yeah.
Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. Good
Night.
night.
Thanks.